From page 15 of your statement, point 40, and I want to quote, you note, and I quote, you say, when one looks at all the cases referred to the IDEC by Mr. Adams, they depict the capture of systems and processes for private interest by the head of CI, or crime intelligence, and other senior managers. And then you say, I can expand more on this when I appear before the committee, unquote. In your statement, you assert that the cases referred to the IDEC by Mr. Adams, and I quote, depict the capture of systems and processes for private interest by the head of criminal intelligence and other senior managers. Could you please clarify what specific systems and processes you are actually referring to here?
Remember, my apologies, I didn't hear which paragraph you referred me to. 1.5. Of my statement. You mean page 1.5? Sorry, I thought you said paragraph 1.5. My apologies. So the systems we talk of, Honourable Member, are the recruitment processes, as well as the vetting processes. So in the manner in which they deliberated about the candidates, the manner in which they sought to appoint a specific candidate, and evidence which will be led about things they did leading up to the interview will show that they manipulated the recruitment process as well as the vetting process. That is part of the evidence that we will lead.
And furthermore, when you speak of, and I quote, capture for private interest, unquote, are you referring to financial gain, manipulation of investigations, or influence over personal and procurement decisions within the Crime Intelligence Division?
It is the third one.
You also indicated that you can, and quote unquote, expand more on this matter before the committee. Could you provide specific examples or case references that illustrate how these systems were captured or manipulated?
Honourable Member, when I said I would expand more, it was in reference to the charge sheet that was attached and those parts that I referred to that I can talk about. The rest of it I'm unable to expand on. That's the expansion I was making. And only because, Honourable Member, those matters are in court and sub judice, and the rights of the accused would also be prejudiced, as would the interests of justice, if I delve into the exact issues, but I think they are expanded on quite clearly in page 7 to 9 of the charge sheet.
So from your experience and the evidence before you, was this capture systemic and coordinated, or did it occur through isolated incidents of misconduct by individuals in senior management?
Because we are dealing with more than one matter, it is systemic and almost invariably by a similar grouping within a similar work environment, seeking to manipulate the very same systems and processes and then some.
Can you share with us, because some other people believe that the process that Lieutenant General Khumalo was involved in was purely an HR process, which is actually followed in any work environment, presiding over, a an interview and constituting a panel and so on. Lieutenant General Mkwanazi, when he was here, he told us that, but that individual was not employed, was not appointed by that particular panel. The panel made a recommendation to another body, which actually ultimately decided to appoint.
I'm not
Are
sure
you
what,
aware of that?
I'm not sure what General Mkwanazi is talking about, but that is the panel that interviewed Mayor Mokwele, who was then appointed as a brigadier based on their recommendations. I guess if they work as we do, we would make recommendations in IDEC for yourself to be appointed in a specific position. That must still go to the Office of the National Director as well as the Minister, depending on the ranking of the person to be appointed. If that is what he's talking about, I understand it, but that appointment cannot be made if the recommendation did not come from the panel that conducted the interview. That's how I understand the process, Honorable Member.
But are you aware of a certain general who actually left the police service and was employed somewhere in Johannesburg, and he got re-employed into the police service, and on the day of his appointment, he was actually not only reappointed but promoted to be a lieutenant general. And on the very same day, he was also appointed as the Deputy National Commissioner without going through any kind of competency test. By the way, he had failed the competency test elsewhere.
So you are talking about Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibia, because I think it is as obvious as today is,
Well, I don't know.
as is Thursday. And I have to say respectfully so, I'm not privy to what happened there, but if what the honorable member is saying is correct, then one would have had to look at the irregularity of that appointment, how that appointment came about, and what systems and processes were bypassed in order to favor the individual. Because from the account that you give, honorable member, it would seem that he was favored for the post.
If I look at the movement and the communication between IDEC and the echelons of the police regarding the dockets, to me, what comes out very, glaringly is lack of trust. Is it normal procedure for IDEC that each time you want dockets, you should subpoena them, not actually take a telephone, make a call to the National Commissioner or to the relevant general? Look, I need those files. Can they be delivered tomorrow? I'm saying this because the National Commissioner was subpoenaed and he had to physically deliver the files. What does that say to...
On a point of correction, the dockets, I wrote to the Divisional Commissioner in charge of detectives to get those dockets. We must be able to show that we followed process, which is exactly what Lieutenant General Jacobs of the Inspectorate says in one of the documents of MK15, the annexure that was handed by the evidence leader to myself as a witness. However, Honorable Member, I indicated, when it came to documents that were sought, we have to secure chain of custody. When we want to use documents for court and they are not in the possession of the person that we need them from, it is best to subpoena that person. But I did indicate, I called the Commissioner to indicate what we were going to do and to indicate why and who is it that we should be serving the subpoena on. So there was an agreed to process. There was a gentleman's handshake that happened prior to the actual submission of the subpoena, Honorable Member.
So, still on those dockets, do you agree that the Honorable Mr. Adams actually misled you by saying that the dockets were missing when in fact they were being processed.
If they are exactly those dockets that we received, you are correct.
Last question, Chair, has to do with an observation that I actually have made, through the engagement with the advocate. There is an honorable member who also alluded to the fact that there is a glaring lack of coordination in our criminal justice system, because it would appear the left does not know what the right is doing. You know, if you look at the issue of, for instance, the missing files, you know, the whole world knows now that there were no missing files, because they were there and they were in safe custody of a lieutenant general. And when you wanted them, you got them. And that the files were actually being processed. And here is the note which was written to the National Commissioner. So if you had picked up the phone and talked to the National Commissioner without a subpoena, he would have told you that no, the files are being processed, and not allow yourself to be hoodwinked and actually be deceived by a person whose motives are not known.
Honorable Member, we did not subpoena the National Police Commissioner. The dockets that are being referred to, we were informed that the dockets, we must check with General Sentumule. She's the head of detection. Detectives keep dockets. So what I did is I wrote to her. We did not subpoena her. And General Sentumule then, through whatever processes, facilitated that those dockets come to IDEC. There was nothing untoward in that conduct, and we were able to procure the dockets. I've said, and I want to please repeat, what the ID and IDEC would have appreciated, given that I, for the first time today, have insight into the contents of MK15, I would have expected that the moment that letter went to the police, they should have informed IDEC, we have these dockets because we have a complaint, there is a process we are going through, please take a chair and sit down. That was not communicated, Honorable Member. So IDEC was unaware of that process. And where you make the point, there should have been communication, but it should have come from the police who were sitting with these dockets on an alleged complaint that nothing was being done. We were not aware of that.
And probably they did not know that the matter had been referred to you, because Honorable Adams actually walked in Orlando Police Station and actually opened a charge. He walked here. He walked into the police station here and opened the charge. And then they were doing a normal course of processing the files, not knowing that the files actually had been referred to another unit elsewhere. So how could they have known that you actually needed the files?
The moment IDEC wrote the letter, that should have activated their knowledge, and it is there that I am saying they should have indicated to the ID that they are vested with this matter. They must be given an opportunity to conduct whatever exercise they need to conduct. When they were done, they would inform us of what the outcome is, and if IDEC still required those dockets, what the process was to follow. That is what I'm saying. They became aware through the letter at a very early stage. It was upon them to indicate we need time to do this process.
And another example of lack of communication and coordination has to do with the issue of cell phones that we've actually been talking about here. Cell phones were actually taken by another legitimate unit that was doing its own job. And if you had known that those cell phones were actually also in the possession of that particular unit, you could perhaps have approached the matter differently.
Unfortunately, Honorable Member, when it comes to electronic devices, law enforcement is bound by the Cyber Crimes Act. So even if we had called the counter surveillance unit of the PKTT because we knew they were dealing with it, even to access it, we have to get an access warrant from a judge. So even if we called them, it would have served no purpose. You still have to get a warrant, and it is in terms of the Cyber Crimes Act. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
When the former Minister of Police was here, he told us that he knew your husband, he worked with him, and he knows that there is no love lost between your husband and Lieutenant General Khumalo. And he was not surprised that IDEC should actually do what you have actually done to Lieutenant General Khumalo.
He is wrong on the charges, and I cannot comment on who likes who and how they work. I'm not in that environment. I also don't know how the ex-minister became privy to that information. It's not for me to comment. But the case that we dealt with is a legitimate corruption matter which we dealt with.
My last take is that, well, I don't know. The matter is still going to go before court. But reading from what is actually said here on the charges, there could be a lot of speculative evidence here. Because if you are going to say Lieutenant General Khumalo did what he did because he wanted to employ X in order to have some kind of personal gain from the slush fund, whatever. But that is speculative. What evidence do you have? Because that has not happened.
We have witnesses who will testify in court, Honorable Member.
Members, I'm going to dissuade you from discussing the charges. There should be a competent authority which will decide if the charges stand or not.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair. In fact, I was touching on the charges because they were presented to us, and the fact that, Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi was very emphatic in that IDEC is...
What I'm saying, Honorable Mngang, I don't have a problem with you making your observation, but if you want to pass a judgment on the charges, we will be overreaching as Parliament, and let's observe the independence of other institutions.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. No, I take your advice.
Honorable Sangwan.
Thank you, Chair. I think on